So it's nice to see everyone this afternoon.
Well, Cherie, can you give us a self-introduction?
Yes, so I am currently the chief auditor at Western Union, and I have over 30 years of finance, compliance, risk, and auditing experience. The first 20 of that was in telecommunications. I joined Western Union a decade ago, and I oversee our global internal audit function and provide compliance and risk management guidance. I'm also on the board of our bank, Western Union International Bank, based in Vienna. And I spend a lot of my time thinking about Western Union, the risks at Western Union, the passion for what we do here at Western Union. And I guess I had the privilege of leading a very complicated settlement with the Department of Justice and with the Arizona Attorney General's office. So with that, I was able to work through some very tricky problems that Western Union had, and we were able to successfully close those items as I was moving out of compliance and over into audit. So I am also our executive sponsor for Women at WU, and I sit on our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. And with that, I will kick off my presentation. And I just have one slide to talk to you about people, passion, and persistence. And instead of putting together a very long PowerPoint, I thought I would just share with you my personal journey and my professional journey. And what I would say is, as you have questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat, and we can go from there. And Ginger, if you can help field those questions as they come in. But I'd really like this to be interactive. So when they asked me to talk about people, passion, and persistence, I couldn't really differentiate my personal life from my professional life. And so as I start the journey, I'll focus you to the left side of the page with the gray-haired gentleman, and he and I toasting. So this is my husband, Scott. And I would say for people and passion and persistence, it takes the right person, a whole lot of persistence, and a good dose of passion to make it work. And he and I yesterday celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary. And I will tell you, it has not been necessarily a straight line, as many things are not. But through a lot of persistence, you see then on the bottom left, my older daughter, Sara, who is a director of sustainability at Ball here in Denver for North America, holding my 1-year-old grandson, Charlie. And then just to the right of that, you see my younger daughter, Megan, who got married this fall. And she currently works for the Colorado Hospital Association in their policy division. And she and her husband have moved back to Denver. So with a lot of passion and persistence, what you see is this family that has grown over the 35 years and continues to expand with, grandchildren and son-in-law. And when you think about that and a 35-year marriage, and you apply it to the companies and our careers, for me, it really takes the right company having the right purpose, and then a lot of persistence to make a career work. So the first 20 years of my career, I worked in telecommunications. And I worked for what I thought was going to be in a very stable utility, basically. My husband is very entrepreneurial. So I went to work for Hawaiian Telephone because Scott is from Honolulu. And I thought I was going to work for this just run-of-the-mill utility, very stable, given what he does. And I ended up working for one of the most tumultuous industries that the world had ever seen. When you think about where I started 35 years ago with landlines and where we are today, There's nothing about that industry that has been easy and straight line, and everything about it, what we knew for 70 years has changed. And so, for me, it was a great learning ground to work in telecom. I was able to work in all aspects. My career has not been a straight line. I've worked in finance, regulatory, project management, operations, international pricing, M&A, and pretty much everything but maybe IR, treasury, and regulatory. So with that move and living in Honolulu for 10 years, we moved to Denver, 23 years ago, because my younger daughter had a health crisis and we actually needed to move to Denver to be closer to her doctors. So I went to work for US West, which, as for many of you in Denver, that's a name from the past, but it was a very, stable company, but going through a lot of changes. And if you've lived in Colorado long enough, you probably have had relatives who work for US West as well. So for me, when I came to Denver, started working in audit for US West, then continued on through a path, and then US West was acquired by Quest. So what happens when a company loses its way, like Quest did? You had a CEO and an executive management team that were playing pretty loose and fast with the rules, and they lost their way, and they had to restate earnings. Their CEO goes to jail, and the morale in the company really, was at a very, very, very low point. And a new management team came in and really focused on the people and persistence and a passion for serving our customers, and turned the company around and really built the company back up to a company that was respected and people felt good working for. So when US West was sold to CenturyLink, I had the opportunity to either move to Monroe, Louisiana, or take a sabbatical, and I chose to take a sabbatical. And one of the things that I did on my sabbatical was I slept a lot, I exercised a lot, I spent a lot of time with family, but I really thought about what I wanted to do. And one of the criteria for what I wanted to do next was work for a purpose-driven company. And I wasn't sure that it was a nonprofit, but that was certainly on the table. So I had an opportunity to come to Western Union in 2012 and as a contractor. And I thought I would be here for, a few months working on this regulatory issue as a project manager. And one thing led to another. And I ended up becoming the deputy chief compliance officer, running, like I said, these big settlements with the Department of Justice in the state of Arizona. And I absolutely fell in love with Western Union and its purpose. And for those of you who don't know, Western Union moves money cross-border, and they move money family member to family member, individual to individual. And our average transaction is $300, and we are able to move money virtually anywhere in the world that it's allowable by law. And we do so safely, transparently, and with a lot of certainty that the money you give to us, whether it's at a Walgreens or a King Super or a small shop, will get to its destination. And our customers send money for education. They send money for healthcare, for housing. And we do more to change the lives of families and people in poverty around the world than many of the monetary, the aid nonprofits can do, just because ours is so personal, person to person. So when I had the opportunity to move from compliance to audit, I saw that really as an ability to expand the people that I interact with and to help Western Union in a different way. So the picture you see in the middle at the top is my team in Denver, and we were able to celebrate our first quarter results from audit by taking the entire team to the Avs game. I also have team members in Vienna, Dublin, Pune, and Lithuania. So we have a team all around the world, but one of the things that I consistently try to tell our team members is celebrate and appreciate the people. And I am so fortunate to be able to work with this amazing group of people at Western Union, and that they just constantly are doing their best to produce the best quality work that we can. And I report out to our board, and they are very, very much appreciative of the work that we do here in audit at Western Union. So the next area, before I leave people, are there questions?
Come on, everyone, keep those questions coming into our chat.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of celebrations as well, so thank you. Any other questions before we move to passion? So I believe we all need to have passions in our lives and things that help us. So I have a passion for gardening. So on the top right, you will see my flower gardens from last year. And in the middle right, you'll see one of the harvests of my vegetable garden last year. And all good passions absolutely require persistence. So for those of you who garden, I don't know how many of you were like I was last Friday, running around putting tarps down on everything here in Denver and hoping for the best. And then I have an ongoing hate relationship with the Japanese beetles here in Denver that continue to eat my roses every summer. But it's always worth it. When I can go out and pick the flowers or go out and harvest, the vegetables and share them with our families, I get a huge amount of joy, not only from the sharing the fruits of all the labor, but actually in just the calm and the time that I have. My husband is not a gardener, so a lot of this is something that I do out on my own. And I really find it very meditative to be out digging and gardening and pulling weeds and just, it's great thinking time for me. And so you think about personally what I love around gardening, and you think about professionally what I love about being a leader at Western Union and being the executive sponsor of Women at WU. I love supporting women. I love mentoring women. I enjoy, helping just talk through challenges. I've been a working mom. I see the challenges that my own daughters are going through. I see the opportunities for women just expanding. And I also see with some of the situation with COVID, it's really put additional burden on working women. And whether you're single, whether you're supporting small ones, whether you're supporting, elderly parents or friends. I mean, this past year has forced women in many respects to reevaluate careers and to make some tough choices. So when I spend time at Women with WU and with our DE&I initiatives, it's really to help people see options and see choices and maybe sometimes just have an ear to listen to. And on the top left, you see two of my team members and I. Western Union did a big panel with our women leaders on International Women's Day. And those are the three of us doing the Break the Bias pose this year. And as far as we've come, I do feel like in the past couple of years, there's been a couple steps backward that we need to continue to work through and be conscientious of and to not lose sight of. So some of the things we do here at Western Union is we have women's leadership circles. We have a monthly speaker series. As I said, we support International Women's Day. And then we put on ongoing events, not only here in Denver, but at our offices around the world. I also spend time supporting our different employee resource groups and seeing how maybe the LGBTQ and the women at WU can work together to put on programming for our organization. So I would just say it's really important when you find your people and you find that company that, feeds your passions and has a purpose, to be supportive of each other, be supportive of your communities. And it's really important to nurture those relationships. Too often, people move from one thing to the next and we let the things behind us go. And we need to really take the time, be very cognizant of building those relationships over time and paying it forward. I think there was one question that came in. Let me look really quick. Biggest difference between working in Hawaii and working in Denver? I would tell you, surprisingly enough, they're fairly similar in that the people were incredibly welcoming, very open, and could not have been, more supportive. I would say the biggest difference was just the geography. When I was in Hawaii, I could see an entire telephone company in a couple buildings and a couple base yards. In Denver, because we were in, all these Western states, I spent a lot more time on the road, out traveling to our call centers, out meeting with my colleagues around the regions. But from a lifestyle perspective, that's probably why my Hawaii-born husband does so well here. The laid-back culture is not that dissimilar to Hawaii. So are there other questions about passion, persistence, gardening? Okay.
Well, and also, if anybody would like to ask Cherie a live question, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you also.
Yeah. So I want to make sure, Ginger, that we have some time for questions. So my final thought about this slide, you see my people, both work and family. You see my passion in gardening and in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then I really think it's important for all of us that we find that area or that place or that time where we can find some peace. And whether you just need to go there mentally in your mind or you can physically go there, I think it's incredibly important that everyone find a place that brings them calm. And so I put two of mine on here. So the snow picture in the river is a property that we go to up in the mountains in Tabernash, Colorado, and we fly fish. And so if I'm ever having sort of a rough day and I sit down and close my eyes and think about standing in that river and looking at Byers Peak, that brings me incredible calm and peace. And then my other place is the North Shore on Oahu. And this is our friend's beach house that we spend a bunch of time at. And again, if I ever am having sort of a rough day or need to take a breath, and I can close my eyes and see this view of the North Shore, it brings me a lot of peace and tranquility. So in this fast-paced world of running from place to place, I think everybody needs at least a place in your head you can go to. Biggest challenge to get to your current leadership position. I would say constantly being open to new opportunities. And so I am really good at, when I'm in my role and heads down and performing really well, I probably need to look up. And I've had great mentors and great sponsors. And when the current CFO, who's my administrative boss, came to me 4 years ago and said, "Cherie, would you like to think about being the chief auditor?" Thank goodness he was looking out for me, because I knew the current chief auditor was moving on, and I just hadn't thought about that next step and thought about this as a role for me. And that's probably, my biggest challenge is to keep that bigger picture, to keep looking up, to keep thinking forward and not be so heads down in the role that I'm currently in. But I've had great sponsors and great mentors along the way who've been really, really beneficial in helping me move through organizations and given me great opportunities. The other thing I would say is when people suggest things for you, even if they don't necessarily feel exactly the right thing, say yes, and because somebody sees something that makes sense. Don't say, oh my gosh, I don't know that I'm really qualified for that. Say absolutely, let's talk about it, and why do you think I would be good at that? What do you see for me in there? Other questions?
It's a very quiet group this afternoon. Normally we're bombarded with questions.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope me sharing my personal story and some of my personal passions and certainly my people has resonated with all of you. And I would tell you, man, you got to find your people at work as much as you've got to find your people at home. It's really important. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.